Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com, debatephysics.com also, but again the debate is non-existent because nobody will counter arguments made. So you make arguments and there won't be any counter argument provided in any reasonable form. So can't really have an argument if no one will provide the counter arguments. Okay, so I'm going to make some points about how reality works, and about how, more specifically, about how you conduct experiments and what you have to look for. And they're all vulnerable to unseen or unrecognized variables, and you have to control for those variables because they will change the outcome of the experiment. And the fact that that can't even be acknowledged is rather ridiculous. So anyway, this Dispar's lab guy, okay, just completely, I find him very difficult to watch. Anyway, so obnoxious, so arrogant, so stupid. So anyway, he's defending, I already pointed out, I think now in 2 videos, at least in one, that launching things is complicated. So the idea is you want to test something. So you want to test a theory where you're required to give something twice the velocity. Now, I think even an imbecile can understand the faster you make something happen, the more tiny little variables can affect the outcome. Because of that tiny amount of time that everything is happening in. And so obviously twice the velocity is asking a lot from a system, in the sense that it's a pretty severe test. And that you'd have to be aware of the fact that you might create a little nudge or a little something that'll completely change the results, because the faster the event's happening, the more critical any deviation in function, more it's going to matter. Alright, I pointed out the difference between pushing and hitting. I've pointed out the fact that you always have to account for the weight of the stuff that's also acquiring momentum when you're creating some mechanism to push. You don't want to have anything in the way between the object and the thing. You don't want some secondary thing to be pushed and then that hits into some other thing. Those are all negative circumstances that can screw up, okay, what you're trying to do, which is transfer energy efficiently. Alright, so he's defending this stupid toy, and so I'll make it even clearer, the problems with it.
Close. So yeah, once again the 1.4 thing seems to be a thing, and this seems.
So he says proof that 1.4 is a real thing. No, you're just again proving that you're a noisemaker, as I've called you from the very beginning. All you do is make noise. You're just muddying the water. You're too stupid to do anything constructive, so you're just being a mess maker. You're a little kid smashing your fingers in the mud.
To be good proof that this launching device is not a piece of crap.
Okay, it's a piece of crap. You can see right there. Look at this huge, gigantic plastic piece that's acting as a lever. So the spring is a rubber band. So it's run on a rubber band. The rubber band moves the piece of plastic. Then the piece of plastic has to push the car. So the rubber band isn't directly pushing the cars. It's pushing something in between, which is another hunk of weight. Now, if you take that piece of plastic and weigh it, you might find that it weighs half as much as a car. Might even weigh the same amount as a car, because the cars are fairly light. So this is another problem with the experiment. He's doing an experiment, the cars are flying out at insanely high velocities. So it's really difficult to do any analysis, because you can't, certainly the video is not going to do you any good in ascertaining defects or even results. Having some way to verify what the timing gate does. Now that's a whole nother subject that I'll get to, and just demonstrates that this isn't just accidental deception and fraud. Okay, his arguments, they're not only just stupid, they are crooked. Okay, they're cheats, because he has been playing with the timing gates, and he's provided no explanation for the game he's playing with them. All right, so let's just get to the simple argument of this launching device that he thinks is perfect. All right. So as explained in previous videos, again, I wasn't fully aware of this, 2 months ago. I didn't fully appreciate the directness of this simple argument that can be made about how you have to be observant. All right. So I thought that in a catapult, I kind of thought the lever didn't matter. The mass of the lever is the same for both experiments. How could it possibly be playing a role? Blah blah blah. But I didn't realize that obviously if the lever is moving different speeds, that means it's absorbing a different amount of momentum. So the lever doesn't absorb the same momentum, because if it moves faster, it absorbs more momentum, and if it's moving slower, it's absorbing less momentum. And that's a problem. And so the same thing is happening here. We have a force, okay, energy coming in the sense of a rubber band being expanded. And the idea would be, the ideal would be like a slingshot, because there's not much can go wrong, because it's just the rubber band. You're not moving any other mass. So you have a very light rubber band and nothing else. So his device has the rubber band, but it has this conversion device. We'll just make it a square. This piece of plastic that's really just a lever. And the rubber band's tied to one end, and it's going to push this other end and move the car with more velocity. Now, frankly, we really don't want more velocity. Kids do, but to do the experiment, we really don't need the car going 60 miles an hour. So anyway, so the point is this thing has a mass, and that mass of that piece, that lever, has to be included. So when you put the car on there, the car might be it might be 2/3 of the mass. It might only be 1/2 of the total mass. And then when you put a heavier car on, okay, so that's with a one mass car put on. When you put the heavier car on, it's going to be less of that total. This will be a smaller percentage of the total mass. So more of the force, okay, is going to be in the object you're moving, not in the object you're pushing superfluously, the extra piece you're having to push along. It's a smaller percentage that it will consume. So it's consuming more, higher percentage of the total velocity this will get is getting consumed by the piece. And the piece consumes less of the total momentum in this case. So the advantage goes to the heavier object, which in his experiment ended up going faster than it should. So the lighter object only went 1.4. So the obvious thing is you have the same force, and the expectation is half the mass, okay, should equal twice the velocity. He got 1.4. Okay, so part of the problem is he got 1.4 because he's not realizing that there's a differential. The mass of the part is only 1/5 of this mass, and it's 1/3 of this one. So it's occupying more of the momentum is in the moving piece than in the object. This is consuming more because it's moving faster. This piece will actually move faster when you're trying to go twice the velocity. It's obviously moving faster. That means it consumed more force. That means there's less force pushing this than this. So obviously it can't be producing the same force. It's not a perfect force producer. It's none of that stuff, okay, because it does have this piece in the way. Between the rubber band and the mass, there's another mass you're moving, and that mass is consuming a portion of the momentum. So that argument right away, that cancels. So his perfect 1.4 result can obviously be understood to be wrong, okay, just by this fact. This fact means it's wrong. The truth is that it didn't get the same force. This one did get less force, just a fact. And so your number is obviously wrong. So you didn't get your perfect prediction for that reason alone. All right, now we'll get to the second thing we did. There's probably a third and a fourth, but that's what all this is. This is just me sitting here having to debunk, okay, bullshit. Crappy experiments done crappily, frankly. And that's all it is. There's nothing else. There's always a flaw. There's always a fundamental unattention to detail. And they're all details I've talked about. So he's aware of them. He's aware of the requirement to be aware of this stuff. They don't care. Back, yes. Okay, so I need to put this back on temporarily. You really can't see much. He's not even smart enough to have the camera the opposite way, so the watermark isn't right on top of the damn experiment, which is really stupid. But you can see if you look carefully at this timing gate, he has it all the way to one side. That is, the car is going by just one side of the timing gate. And if we go back a little further to where these things are getting measured, somewhere in here, presumably. So, oh yeah, there's a picture of the timing gate. See, as it pushed over to one side, and it's obviously, for some reason. Now, he doesn't tell us what that reason is. Why is it over to one side? What did you observe that you decided not to have the track in the middle of the sensor? So it indicates these sensors are, economical sensors. So they're not very good at filtering the light. And so the cars, he takes the same car and then he glues a bolt on it. Okay, so I don't know if we can. That should have been here somewhere. We couldn't have taken the picture of the. Did he show the heavy car first? It's got to be in here somewhere. Well, anyway, he's got a big giant bolt glued on it, and it's obviously changes the profile of the car. So the image of the car is changed. There's more stuff on the car. The car is blocking. Okay, you could argue a viewpoint. It's creating more obstruction to what you would say is ambient light. All right, so what he's never done, the simple experiment I've requested numerous times, is first just to see if these timing gates are consistent. So he has two of them, and so he should just do those simple experiments to just run a car through both and see what kind of times you get. Just to know that the damn things are consistent with each other. So, he has the track. It's not a big deal. It's an almost nothing experiment to perform, and just to show that, whatever timing they're doing it consistently. So the idea would be to do that. You could have the timing gate, set up, and you just put them both, within a couple inches of each other, and the velocity should be slightly different, slightly less the further the car rolls. So you just roll it through both of the timing gates and see if they both read a similar velocity, and then run it backwards. And so what he has apparently done is at some point he found that the track, let's say the track was going through the middle of these timing gates, that didn't work, that somehow it was better to have the timing gate skewed to just one side, that is blocking one side, all right, and the other side extends past the track. And this is important because in one experiment he has that reversed, that is the side that's the emitter, emitting light, is reversed in the other case. So in one case he's measuring the car as it goes by the emitter, and in the other case he's measuring the car as it goes by the receiver. So that doesn't seem quite right. For consistency alone, you think you would measure them passing the same side. But again, why has he chosen this option? Now, when he did the cars, this latest experiment, all right, so he has a car, let's just say it has a profile something like this. All right, and what he does to make the two-mass car is he takes that profile and he puts a big nut on it. Okay, so the profile of the car is obviously there's more stuff to the car. The car has a bigger volume of light blocking surface. So his claim is that his sensors are low enough, that he can block the light by where the car goes across the light from tail to back end. Now we don't know if this is the part maybe of the car that's going across. We don't know. I have no information. So obviously if the sensor is a little higher than that, and what he's really measuring is how much light is blocked from here to here, then obviously when you put this big bolt on here, you're going to change that measurement, because obviously it's going to block the light a lot sooner, all right, than in the other case. And you're going to end up with a reading that might say the whole thing happened faster because it blocked the light sooner, and then it opened up enough extra light to come through. So it's just the idea is it's just a photodiode, okay, that usually these systems work on, and they're not very light specific. That is, they tend to like infrared light more than ultraviolet light. But what he also should be testing is, do I get a different speed number, from a certain size card if the lights are on, the ambient light, okay, if the lights are on, if I shine a flashlight on, do I get a different number? And that'll tell you a lot about whether you got a really pure beam. So the argument would be, if he had a real pure beam, that is, if the emitter produces light, but only light, okay, that goes straight right here, this light is the only light that gets into the receiver, well, then it wouldn't matter where in that beam you block it, over here, over here. But obviously if what's happening is reflected light, that is light that's bouncing around a bit, ends up getting into the emitter. It reflects off this, bounces off that, comes back here, ends up in the emitter. So this is more sources of light. So you have these other angles that are producing light. And if that's happening, well, then obviously it's going to make a difference whether you go past the emitter or you go past the receiver. And you're going to get a different number based on the profile, what the profile of the thing is you're passing through, the card, so to speak, isn't going to be consistent. So what he should have done is put a little blob of tape on the car, the one mask. He could have put just crinkle up some masking tape, so make some kind of blob on the front that's the same size as this, double the weight. The other thing to point out is that he put double the weight on the back wheels, or the front wheels, however you want to look at it. So he had the whole weight of the car, that is the mass of the car, he put another car essentially on top of the back wheels to double the weight. So that's probably not a great idea either. If you're going to put the mass on the car, you probably want to try to keep it somewhere in the center of the car. Probably be a fairer thing to do. But anyway, so that's a real curiosity. Like I said, he's really got to explain why he's got the track skewed to one side of the sensor, and why in the previous experiment he did, he had it one way for the car leaving and he had it the opposite way for the car coming back in. Now another problem with that experiment I just wanted to point out is that it seems clear that he's trying to capture the velocity right after it leaves the lever, but he really isn't doing that. The lever moves on an arc, okay, and he has the car in a position where it's still hit by the lever when it's moving through the sensor. So he has the sensor here, the car here. The car is accelerating. It hasn't reached its total velocity. So for part of the journey, it's going rather slowly because it's accelerating through this whole period where it goes from leaving the lever, to being pushed by the lever initially, to leaving the lever is all acceleration. That means its velocity is changing, constantly increasing, and to a final velocity that will be here. This is the final velocity at the top. So you're measuring acceleration, which is going to be slower. The average velocity of the acceleration is going to be slower than the final velocity. The final velocity is obviously going to be the peak of the acceleration, not the average of the acceleration. So you don't want to be pushing the car through the sensor while it's still accelerating. So you could argue that was kind of a, if he was guilty of that, it's an obvious defect. Okay, now you really can't tell from the video because it's got a watermark on top of it and it's filmed from 43 feet away. So it's pretty hard to see anything. but it certainly looks like it to me that the lever goes well past the sensor. He has the sensor above the track, the lever moves way past the sensor, so we don't know exactly when the car left the lever. So an obvious flaw, frankly. Now in the current experiment, you do see that the car does stop. No, this is the launcher one. But in the previous experiment, you actually do see that when the one car comes into the lever, it does stop, and he's getting less than half the velocity coming out. And you got to say, well, if the other car used all of its momentum, all of the momentum has to be coming out the other side. You can't destroy momentum. You have to account for where it is. So that's bogus too. But again, this is all there is. He keeps doing this. I'm proving, and there's no logic or reasoning behind what he's proving or stating. He won't pay any attention to things that seem kind of obvious, like it's not ideal to put the weight on top of one set of the wheels. I mean, that's kind of an obvious thing. Having the timing gate skewed to one side or the other, yes, maybe you have a good reason. Maybe you tested it and found that it's more erratic. But isn't that evidence of something that we should be informed of? That the timing gates don't work very well? You know, that you have to skew them to one side to get better readings? Yeah. Then again, that points out that then profile is really important. You know, then how your card goes through the sensor is going to really matter. In this case, there was no card. He was just using the cars themselves with no reasoning explaining what part of the car is blocking the light. Whether it's the top part of the car, the middle of the car, what part of the car is blocking the light. And obviously the higher up, if it's the top of the car blocking the light, then obviously the heavy mass is going to be different because it has another light blocker on it. Yeah, that's probably enough. But I mean, that's all there is here. Is this, you're just trying to sit there and say, it's like, Ian Gosling hid the clay experiment. So he did a clay experiment, where he drops the half mass from 4 times the height, the full mass from 1 unit of height, and they crushed the Play-Doh the same amount, and he wouldn't publish it, and he certainly didn't explain the results at all. He didn't have to debunk them because he didn't publish them. And certainly he hasn't dealt in any way whatsoever with my simple argument that his one claim that the Play-Doh is fracturable, that it doesn't somehow crush evenly. Well, he didn't show any of that. He didn't show us him getting irregular results. His own testimony was that it came out the same every time. Well, if the clay isn't crushing evenly, then it wouldn't come out the same every time. So that doesn't seem like a very useful argument. But that's there. So they just dropped the ball when it comes to defending this crap. I mean, I've made 5-minute videos on the clay experiments. I've pointed out how Leibniz was wrong to say that dropping a 1 mass from 4 times the height is the same weight as dropping a 4 mass from 1 unit of height. Why don't they explain how that's the truth and how Leibniz's axiom was correct? So it just goes on and on. So the Brozo experiment, again, they haven't debunked his experiment. He made a lever, shot billiard balls, across a glass surface. I mean, it's pretty low friction. Got results that were 19 and 11, pretty damn close to 2 to 1. And then this guy's claiming he's proven it's 1.4. Well, there was no 1.4 in Brozo's experiment. So, what's your explanation? Why don't you debunk that experiment? Explain how it had a catastrophic flaw, not a minor flaw, but catastrophically way off. So you have to explain why it's way off. And you have to do it in the context where I would simply state that he could have gotten 2 to 1 if he just moved that yellow ball, the half mass, if he just moved it another inch, to the left, it would have gone twice as fast. It would have been 20 to 10 or 11 to 22. But anyway, so just more bullshit. It's all bullshit. So I don't know. Should I read the comments? They'll all be celebrating, right? So none of these people will ever do any of this work of pointing out the obvious things. They're obvious, right? They're not hidden details. I mean, even with the poor video quality, we can see. Obviously, the sensor's way over to one side. Obviously, so and obviously the launcher has a big giant plastic lever inside of it. I mean, it's not hard to see. So why don't any of these morons do the work of being honest and doing the good science of pointing out how, well, you're saying you got perfect outcome. It's sort of impossible for you to make that argument when clearly the lever inside the launching device consumed more energy in one case than in the other case. All right. So this is, I don't even know where he comes up with this. This experiment also supports Stephen Bro's launching experiment at this link, where the one mass traveled 1.4 more distance. Now, obviously, the one mass going the same velocity as a two mass should travel 4 times the distance. Friction isn't linear. That experiment's been done and done. So I don't even know what 1.4 the distance. But there's no time code here, right? So yeah, we're not doing this. Trying to find the part that's relevant in a Brozo video. Well, maybe I'll pause and go do that. Well, I'll pause now and I'll go see what the video is. See if I can find the pertinent part. So yeah, it's that horrible video with the screeching sirens and stuff, the antics all over the place, and he's launching things into gravity, and that's already been explained. There's no possibility. I mean, either you launch them at the wrong velocity. If you launched it at twice the velocity, it has to go twice as far. That's a physical law, Dispar. You're really a fucking dumb cunt to put this link there. Because that's just fact. So all you're really saying is this result is consistent with Stephen Bro's result, where he doesn't get twice the velocity into the object. He fails to shoot the object at the correct speed. Okay? That's all it does. So it's just another example of, here, I'm using a launching device of my own invention. Okay, it might even be the solder sucker. And you're claiming it's a perfect launching device, when it's clearly not. So fuck you again. So why didn't you put the link to Stephen Bro's billiard ball experiment that basically does show the 2-to-1 outcome? Pretty damn close. Where the one mass, okay, we did it. Okay, both masses were also launched with the same energy input. So again, this is their argument. They've somehow proven the launcher works perfectly, and it doesn't, in one case, steal more energy than the other. You can move the little plastic parts at a higher velocity, and that doesn't consume any energy. Obviously, it does. So, too stupid once again. Superb. My other comment vanished. YouTube must support Gary. So hilarious. Anyways, so the matter is settled once and for all, to quote the great man himself. So how the fuck does this settle anything except proving the point that experimental science is useless in the hands of fanatics? There's no point in doing experiments if people are going to cheat them and lie about them and deceive people with them. And I would argue that Dispar is obviously deceiving us by not explaining why he doesn't have the timing gates oriented so the object moves through the center of the gate. Okay. Oh dear, Dispar, you've been up to your old cheating games again. And obviously he has. Obviously he's contriving experiments to produce his results. That's it. He's manipulated them. Why are the timing gates irregularly placed? Ian, do you have an explanation you can give me? Why does he have the timing gates pushed over to one side? When did that become proven to be the right way to do the experiment? Where did he provide information showing that worked better? Did it work better for producing the results he wanted? Just like you redid the weight experiment, okay, by inventing your own little frickin' accelerator device on a scale, and you just ignored the argument that the faster you move your measuring device, the more momentum it's going to have, and therefore the further it might travel further than it's supposed to. That it's quite obvious that the faster the device moves, the more likely it is to move too far. Yeah, duh. Alright, and then it says, shh, do not reveal me. Okay, it's been improved and has to be my best cheat ever until now. So again, he doesn't understand that the mechanical device he's using, okay, has a lever in it, that lever weighs probably at least half as much as the car's, and therefore it's absorbing a higher percentage of the energy in one case than the other. He can't understand the argument, even though now I've made it 6 or 7 times now. 7 times I've argued about this, that you have to include all the moving objects in the experiment. You can't just think about the ones you want to pay attention to. You have to also pay attention to the one that's pushing. So, too stupid. 6 comments. I don't see 6. Yeah, so I guess I have to do this horrid newest first, please. Oh, it's Falwell. Okay. Hi there, Dispar. Hope you're well. Blah, 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 blah. I've been a bit tied up. Who cares? Thank you so much for recent efforts. Blah, blah, blah. He was quoting a Yoda line from Star Wars in his own the other day. I mean, what a lie. I didn't quote it as my own. I've used it maybe 100 times because it's a really kind of a funny quote. You know. It's just, you know, I mean, these people are just so desperately silly. I mean, anybody who's actually watched my videos knows I've used that Yoda quote. You know, there's do or do not do. There is no try. You know, I've even done it in Yoda's voice. Amazing. Perhaps the only way he'll get to half mass to go 2x as fast with the same energy as if he uses the force. So, no, I'll just show Brozo's video over and over again. And certainly in my own videos doing it with the pendulums, it's certainly more than 1.4. So again, you know, you want to keep arguing that you have a decisive proof here because this experiment came out your way. You've now got all the answers you need, and you don't have to explain all the other experiments that conflict with this answer. Oh, just pathetic mush. I predict that Draft Flat Earth will almost certainly skip over Dispar's last video. So, again, just, you know, more nonsense. So they're obviously junk crap experiments. They got obvious defects in them. They're not curious at all. I mean, they don't want to examine anything. They are just, you know, pretending they're incapable. Now, if it was my experiment and I did it, then they'd be motivated, right? So that's all we're really arguing about, is that the nature of the duplicitous nature of human beings, okay? And that's it. And I'm probably going to be guilty of some of that too. The experiment comes out. I was pretty good about the Mythbusters video saying, yeah, it's pretty good proof. And the fact is, it does have flaws, okay? I don't think there are enough flaws to overcome the fact that when they crashed the real cars didn't show any kinetic energy existing. So that part is pretty hard to get past. You know, all this fake bullshit. Firstly, as he can't deal with the content. So again, I pointed out the numerous flaws in the reasoning and the setup. Besides the fact that he's such a stupid little weasel, he can't even figure out that the watermark shouldn't be on top of the fucking important part of the video. Alright, secondly, because of the litany of comments that call him out on his BS. So where are these comments? Please, I'll put them on my website. Show me the rational counter argument provided. Show me one reasonable counter argument to my claim that you know, against Leibniz's axiom, you know, that dropping 4 pounds from 1 foot weighs the same as dropping 1 pound from 4 feet. Why don't you show me the counter argument that's been provided proving that that is true, demonstrating logically how it could be possible that it's true? And then why don't you counter-argue the argument that the Dechatelet-Clay experiment is fundamentally flawed, because obviously you're not going to do a linear measurement with a round surface. Oh, you're such liars. Ugh. And suggest ways he could keep himself honest. I've done the experiments, okay? So I've also published those, and I'm just frankly telling you, okay? I didn't put proof in my comments. I didn't say they were proof. But what I did say is they're surely indicative, okay? So in every respect, they don't provide any evidence that kinetic energy is in control. Sticking to experimental parameters that, lastly, because Stephen Burrow posted the link to where Daffy got undeniably refuted. So where's this link? Considering he will respond to any comment he can make and show out of... If he... What the hell is that sentence? Considering he will respond to any comment he can make a show out of. So he thinks, what, I pre-read this crap? What are you talking about? I read comments as they show up, in a sense. And obviously I don't read comments that are just all lies and invasions of my personal life. But whatever. If he doesn't address those in the last video, you know he is cherry picking for what remains of his audience. So why don't you just show me the cherry picking? So why don't you just republish right here as a response to this comment. I'll come back. You post the rational comment that debunked anything I've said. So you show me the comment that debunks a single argument I've made. I've made it 7 times now that you have to consider the weight of the lever. 7 times I have made videos pointing out how it was wrong of any of us to think there was an ideal lever involved. There is no ideal lever involved. And clearly Ian Gosling's lever is pretty far from ideal, like really far from ideal, when it weighs half as much as the objects you're pushing. And obviously in this case, Dispar's lever is in a bit of trouble also. Oh, you people are just so fucking despicable. I'll have to find that clip where Daffy Duck says that to Bugs Bunny. You're just despicable. You people really are. You're just despicable punks of shit. Dispar the Despicable. Yeah, maybe that'll be his name. Anyway, fuck this. Okay, so moving on. It's just disgusting that these people are what shows up to defend physics. Fuck.